Welcome to our first ever live Xplenty demo. I'm Taylor Jones, the marketing specialist at Xplenty, and I'm happy to have our senior solutions engineer, Teri Morgan, with me here. She's helped many of our top clients build their data pipelines and is knowledgeable on the Xplenty platform. So Teri, I'm just going to hand it over to you to get started.
Okay, terrific. So, hi everybody, thanks for joining. During the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll get to them and answer them at the end. Okay, so as Taylor said, my name is Teri Morgan and I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Xplenty. For today's demo, we are going to cover these three things. First, what is Xplenty? Second, I'm going to show you how to build a data pipeline that extracts order data, transforms it, and loads it into a Snowflake data warehouse. And third, we'll have time for questions at the end. So first, what is Xplenty? Xplenty is a cloud-based, low-code data transformation platform that helps users organize and prepare data for advanced business intelligence and analytical purposes. The purpose of building a data pipeline is to save you time and manpower by automating those tasks. Let's get started so I can show you, for example, how an e-commerce site or a finance company can automate exchange rate. Let's leave this. Okay. Let's come over here. Welcome to Xplenty. On the left-hand side in the dark gray bar, you'll find our toolbar. This is how we navigate around the platform. The top two icons are for building, both building connections as well as packages. The second two icons, the following two, are monitoring. This is where you would monitor your jobs as well as clusters, which are the resources on our side that we spin up to run your jobs. The fifth icon is our scheduler. So once you've built your data pipelines, you can attach them to a schedule, they spin up, they run on their own. Then the last icon is our settings. So this is where you could invite all your teammates to come in and work in Xplenty. This is also where you might set up service hooks to receive notifications for when your job's complete. If there's a failure, if there are any other notifications that you want, that's where you would set them up. So let's start at the top. Connections. So these are Xplenty's native connectors. You can see all of them in here. All of these connectors, except for the services category, are bidirectional connectors. That means that we can both extract data from them as well as load data into them. The exception to that is Salesforce. We have a bidirectional connector with Salesforce as well, so we can read and write data there. So for our demonstration today, we are going to use Snowflake as our destination. So let's start by creating a connection to Snowflake. Okay, give it a name of your choosing, and then we just need some credentials. Account name. See, username, we need a password, a database and a data warehouse, and then a region, and that is our region. So let's test the connection, see if we can connect. We were successful, yay, okay. So we're gonna create that connection. Once we've created it, it saves it here in our list. So next, we also need a connection to our orders data. Our orders data is being stored in an Amazon S3 bucket. So we'll find it here and give it a name also. Oops, S3. Northern Virginia is perfect. Then we need an access key and a secret access key. Okay, terrific. We'll test that connection. Also successful. Let's create that connection now. So once you've created those connections, they're here, they're ready for us to build with. So we will proceed to the package editor. So packages in Xplenty lingo, these are where you build your data pipelines. So I'm going to give my pipeline, my package a name, my demo. Xplenty supports two different types of flows. First is a data flow. A data flow is your basic data pipeline. It's where you extract data from one or more sources, you perform any transformations necessary, then you can push it to one or more destinations. That's a data flow. We also support a workflow. A workflow allows you to define a sequence of tasks. So a task can either be a data flow or it could be a SQL statement. So, and then once you've defined that sequence of tasks, you define the condition upon which the next task executes. So for instance, run data flow A, and when it completes successfully, now run data flow B. Or if it fails, run data flow C instead. That's a workflow. For us, data flow is all we need for this demo. And then template. So we have helped many clients build out pipelines to a variety. These are often applications that they've used. And so once we help one client build out a pipeline to access and extract data from that source, then we save it as a template so that all of our clients can use it. For us though, we're just going to keep it a blank canvas, and I'll create the package. Okay, so this is that blank canvas. This is, if you were working in Xplenty, this is probably where you would spend the bulk of your time. So first we'll go to add a component. Okay, so in here, you'll see our components are grouped into three columns, three categories. There are source components, transformation components, and destination components. So in the source, you'll see things like file storage and databases. We support many databases. They all are grouped together in there. You'll see, for instance, things like Salesforce. We also have a REST API component. This is kind of a universal REST API component. So if we don't have a native connector built out to a data source that has a REST API, this component will allow us to connect even without the native connector to almost any REST API out there. However, our orders data is being stored in an Amazon S3, which is grouped together in the file storage. So we're going to grab that component, we'll drag it wherever we like, and then we're going to come in here. So this component will find the connection that we just built and populate it in that drop down. Then we need a few bits of information here. The name of the bucket, demo, there we go. We also need a source path. I got it over here. We'll put it in here. Terrific. Okay, new line, that's fine. This is a CSV file, so it's a delimited value. It's the record type, and so that works. The delimiter is a comma. You can see we also support these other delimiters that are very common. However, we also support custom delimiters. So you could have a file delimited with anything, really. So, but comma works for us. We don't need a string qualifier, but the first row does contain field names. So I'm going to check that box and then click next. Then the component makes a connection to that bucket, to that file in particular. It loads in the schema as well as a preview of that data. So I can make sure that this is the data that I was expecting to see. You can also see in here that it gives us the data type that it's reading it in as. So we've got all of that information. It looks great. I am going to save that. Okay. Let me also, okay, so our orders data is now on the platform. We also need to go and get today's exchange rate. So the point, what we are doing in this pipeline is we are reading in this orders data, the price in the file is being stored in EU currency. And we would like to also, once we push it into Snowflake, we would like to also have that price in US dollars. So we need to go and get today's current exchange rate. So we're going to access that through, we are going to make a call to an API using that REST API component. So let me open it up. Okay, this API, this component supports a variety of ways to authenticate for the API. It supports basic, which would cover username and password. If we have built out a native connector, for instance, something like maybe Google Sheets, we would find that connection in here. However, our API is Fixer API, so we do not have a native connector to Fixer. So we're going to pass in that information here. So we need a URL for the endpoint of the API. We're going to put that right in here. If your API required headers, sometimes authentication is passed that way. We would add those here. This one doesn't require it. We pass an access key in the URL, and that works for us. Then, let's see. Then we're going to come down here. Let's click Next. And the component goes ahead. It makes a connection to that API. It reads in the schema. And it also gives us a preview. So we can see, okay, the base is Europe. Okay, inside the rates, we're pulling in the current exchange rate with US dollars. So that is the information we need. So at this point, I could select all of these fields if I wanted, or I can pick and choose, because for my purpose, I really only need the date, and then I need this nested rates map. So I'm going to move that over as well. Now, I know for kind of future that I actually, instead of a date time object for that date, I can kind of see the way it's formatted down here in my preview. I think that I will actually read that in as a string instead, and that'll work better for the transformation that I'm going to do next. So now that this component is all set up, I'm reading in the data I need, I'll go ahead and save it. Okay, so now we did notice that inside there, the specific exchange rate we needed was inside a nested, like a JSON object. And in Xplenty, we call that a map. So I need to extract that out of that, because it's nested, it's inside. So I'm going to transform it. Here, you can see all of our transformation components from distinct all the way up to sort. These are no code, table level transformations. They are very easy to set up. They pretty much just do the one thing that is in their name. Very quick and easy to set up. The select component is the one we're going to use. And the select component is the component in Xplenty that allows for greater flexibility and allows you to access the approximately 150 pre-built functions on our platform. So first, I'm going to autofill and bring those two fields that are flowing in from our API into our pipeline. Now in here, the rates is that map, and the way I extract out, because I want the value of the USD key. So the syntax for that is simply this £, then single quotes and the name of that key, which is USD. Okay, so that's going to give me my exchange rate. I'm just going to name this. You can change these names. I'm going to name it exchange rate. Okay, so now we have that extracted out. So that's ready. I need to bring these two separate streams of data. I'm going to need to bring them together. So the way I'm going to join them is based on the date. Okay, so I'm pulling in a date from my API, and I've got my orders data over here. Now I need to add today's date to the information that's coming in from my orders data so that I can use that as my join key. So I'm gonna use another select transformation component over here. I'll open it up and I'll autofill to bring all of those fields in. All of those are great. I need all of those, but I also need one more. So I click the plus sign and it gives me a whole nother field. I'm gonna open this component here, or this little icon here. This icon opens our expression editor. I made reference earlier to all of the functions that are pre-built in Xplenty's platform. You can see them grouped together in the folders over here. If there's something in particular you're looking for, you can just open a folder to find it, or you can search in the search bar. So I'm looking for a timestamp because I need today's date, the date that this job runs, in order to join it with my API. So I think I'm looking for this function here. Current time gives me the date that this job ran. And it's going to return a datetime object to me. So I can see the syntax is the name of the function with opening and closing parentheses. Now, if you remember, our API was returning specifically, like I chose to have it return a string. And the format of that string was like a 4-digit year, a dash, 2-digit month, dash, 2-digit day. So that's what I need this one to end up looking like. So you can even see in here, for instance, let me just copy that for a second. Let me show you our X console. So in here, we can actually run these functions with literal values to see what they would return. So I'm going to run that function and see that it gives me this whole a full date time object. So I need it to look a little different. So I'm going to format it. I'm looking for a function called toString, which is specifically for dealing with date time. And I'm going to wrap it here. So I need to pass in the two arguments are a datetime field and a format string. So my current time is going to give me that datetime field. So that'll be the first argument. And then the format string I want is year, dash, month, dash, day. That's what I need this to look like. So I think that'll give it to me, but I can double check to be sure by putting it over here. And then I run it, and that looks just right. That looks like what my API was bringing back. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So now I'm running these two functions over here, and they are going to give me a date. So I'm just going to call that field date, and now I'm going to save it. So before I leave this component, though, I showed you the expression editor with all the functions. In here, you can create additional fields. You can attach just a literal value to that field. You can even write conditional statements in here to assign different values based upon conditions of other things. You can perform mathematical functions, all of these things. But for us, for this demo, this is all we need. I'm going to save it. Now I'm ready to join these two data streams. Okay, so we talked, I mentioned earlier some of these table level no code components. Our join component is one just like that. So I'm going to drag over the data that's coming from each of those two select components, join them here. You can see in the first step, those are my two inputs. Then I select from my join type. Then I need to define which of these fields is my key, and I'm looking for that date. The two date fields are the ones that I'm going to join this data on. Go ahead and save that. So now we've brought it all together. We can see if I bring in another select component, we can see all of these fields are now flowing into the same stream of data. If I click autofill, you can see from ID down to this first date, that's the stuff that's coming in from my orders data. Then I have another date and the exchange rate. That's coming from my API. You can see because they both had the same name, it gives me information about which comes from which data stream. Now I don't need both dates, and honestly, I'm really just fine if it's called date. I don't need to change it. But there's one more thing we need to do. Now that we have our price here and we have our exchange rate in the same place, now we can perform the transformation to give us US dollars. So I'm just gonna rearrange those fields. I'm gonna bring this price down here. And then I need one more, actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna rearrange it a little further. There we go. I'm gonna put that there. So I'm gonna take this price, which is in EU currency, and I'm gonna multiply it times my exchange rate. Here we go. So now we've got this price that's in EU currency, and we've got my exchange rate. Now, there's one thing to remember. This, you do have to, especially when working with data, we need to consider the data type. That this exchange rate, because I extracted it out of that nested object, it is currently, from lots of practice, I know this, it's currently being read as a string. It's describing a number, but it's being read as a string. Now this price is a float. So I'm going to explicitly cast that exchange rate to be a float so that this mathematical transformation will work. And then I am going to call this new field USD price. And I'm going to rename this one just so I can keep them straight. This is the EU price. So now we have all of the data that we need in this table all together, and we think looking just the way we want it. So I think we're ready to push it to Snowflake. So as I mentioned earlier, the destinations are all grouped together over here. I'll choose Snowflake. Then I need to find that connection I made, my Snowflake. Then I'll come in here. So with Snowflake, you can define a target schema, or you can leave it blank to use the default one, which is what I'm gonna do. And then I'm gonna give my table a name, and I'm gonna call it my webinar. Okay. We can create this table automatically if it doesn't exist, if you check this box, and we can also add missing columns if you check these boxes, but it's up to you. You get to decide how you want the table to work and how and what Xplenty can do. So then in operation type, we have all of these different things. I think, so we have appends, 2 different overwrites, and 2 different merges. So this is going to be a table that I'm going to push to over and over, and I would like to merge it with existing data. So then you have options here for both pre-action and post-action SQL. This means the pre-action happens before the job runs, before the data is loaded, and post-action would happen after. But for us, we've already, all of our data is transformed and ready to be put in, so there's nothing we need there. We are not going to define any more errors to allow those to pass. So you can see the component is reminding me, don't forget to define a merge key. So I'm going to merge. So I brought in all of my fields, and the ID is my merge key. So once this component is set up, we're going to go ahead and save it. Okay, so now our data pipeline is ready. Let's first, before we run this job, let's perform this save and validate function. That won't catch every possible error that might happen, but it's going to catch things like our data type mismatches, schema mismatches. If, you know, we had deleted a field and now, you know, the component was expecting it, it catches all those types of things. But it looks like we're good. No errors were found. So now we're going to come in here and click Run Job. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click plus new so that I can show you this part here. So in Xplenty, we have 2 different types of clusters. We have sandbox and we have production. So Sandbox is perfect for development. You can run jobs over there, you can build, and none of those things disrupt any production jobs that are running. So that's great. However, given that I already had a Sandbox open, I'm going to show you this. So I'm going to go ahead and start a production cluster. A production cluster is where you're going to want, once your data pipelines are built, maybe they're attached to a schedule, they spin up and run automatically. They're going to run in production clusters. The production cluster is more robust and will run that job even more fast, even more quickly. Okay, and in here we can define you as the owner of this data pipeline. You get to decide how long does the cluster stay open. Does it close like 1 minute after the job finishes? Does it stay open for longer? If you're building, if you're working a lot in the platform, you might choose to leave it open. But for us, I think 10 minutes, that sounds perfect. I'll go ahead and create that cluster. That's the first step. Then in here, we choose a package. So this is the package that I built, but you can see in the drop down, if for some reason there was a different package I wanted to run, I could do that. Then next, the last step here is to edit any package variables. Any user variables that you might have defined, you can edit right here before the job runs. Likewise, there is an option to edit the values for these system variables in our platform. But we're good, and I'm just going to choose to run the job. So it's submitted for execution. It's going to take just a minute to spin up the cluster and then run that job. While it's doing that, I'm going to show you our scheduler. So over here, we can create a new schedule. You can give it a name. We'll go ahead and call it webinar. Then step 1 here is to decide how do you want to define when it runs. Either a certain number of increments of time, and increments of time can be anything from minutes to months. So maybe this is I want to keep this really up to date, and I'm going to run it every 10 minutes. However, if you wanted, you could also choose to define a custom cron expression. I want to run it every Monday morning at 9 a.m. or whatever. But for us, 10 minutes will work. Step number 2 is very similar to the cluster configuration we just did. This is specific to this schedule. So in here, you have that same drop down of how long does the cluster stay open. You also get to choose what kind of cluster does it run on. Does it need to spin one up automatically? Can it run on any cluster that's similar to the one that I've defined, which is kind of the default, and I'm fine with that. So I'm going to leave that here. And then the last step is to add packages to this schedule. So in here, when we're going to add a package, they populate in that drop down. Let's add the one that we just built. Step number 2 is to choose a package version. So on Xplenty, we support version control, and you have the option of both making minor changes, minor saves, or creating major versions with descriptions at all. So the default here is always run the latest version of the package, but it's really up to the user. The user can choose. If maybe, for instance, you're like, no, I really want version 2.5, that's the one you can assign here. Then again, you have another opportunity to edit those package variables. Once you're happy with that, you add it here. Now, we've added one package to this schedule, but maybe you have like 10 different data pipelines that all need to run every 10 minutes. You could add them all here. So once you've got all the packages associated with the schedule that you need, then you create the schedule. Now, whenever that time arrives, it spins up and runs those jobs automatically. It closes the cluster whenever you told it to close it, and it just does it all by itself. So let's go back. Let's go to this third icon in our toolbar. This is our jobs panel. This is where you're going to see records of the jobs that you've run. We can see ours at the top here is just finishing up. But you'll see on this panel, this gives you job logs for approximately the last 80 jobs you've run, whether they were successes. If there was a problem and a failure, that's where you'd see your error logs. Aha, but here is our package, and it is 100% completed and all green. If we open the details, it tells us that it wrote 2,383 records to Snowflake. It gives us information about how long that took. This is where you find those. You can see in here, gives you what did those variables evaluate to at runtime. This is where you would find all of that data. So that is our package. Before I go, we've run it successfully. Let me just show you one more thing. On Xplenty, it's very important to us to support our customers, to support our clients. We have a very well-developed knowledge base. Every component, every function on our platform has detailed written documentation in our knowledge base that is accessible to everyone. In addition, we also have intercom chat support on the platform itself. So it's very easy to get answers to your questions. We have a live support team 24/7. That you can reach in here, and they get back to you, they answer your questions and help you out. So thank you. That is the end of this demonstration.
Yeah, thank you, Teri, for walking us through the Xplenty platform and showing us how to transform currency data. So now, as we reach the ending, we'll take questions from the audience, and then you can submit them in the Q&A section below. So, anyone's curious about anything, then you can ask Teri now. All right, we have someone typing now. Okay, so someone from the audience asked, how many packages can we attach to one scheduler?
Really, as many as you want. The only real limit there is just, for instance, like it would be important that your package could run within the time. Like if you were trying to run a package every 5 minutes, try to run the schedule every 5 minutes, then you would need to make sure that your packages all ran within that 5 minutes. But there is no real limit to how many could run. So you can attach as many as you like.
Cool. Anyone else? All right, well, while we're waiting to give other people the opportunity to ask a question, I'll just ask a question since I'm curious. So is there a way to set up alerts for the status of the pipelines when they run?
Yes, definitely. In fact, here, let me just show you over here in the settings. I kind of alluded to this earlier. You can create a service hook. So if I was going to create a service hook, you can choose how do you want to be alerted, via email, Slack, any of these methods. Let's say we wanted an email alert. You give a name to this service hook, you put in your email address, and then you decide what types of notifications do you want. You can choose all of these job notifications, which include things like every time a job is submitted, started, stopped, completed, and failed. Or if you're like, well, actually, I don't really need all those things. Maybe I just tell me if something fails. Maybe I want to know completed and failed. But you can also even receive alerts about clusters. So this also becomes, so you just get to choose which of these things you want to be alerted by or alerted to.
Okay, and we actually have one more question.
Okay.
can I make my API key not be seen during the API call?
Absolutely. So a lot of APIs, instead of passing it in the URL where it can be visible, you can pass it as a header, as an authentication header. Really, it kind of just depends specifically on your API. It kind of comes down to that, but that's usually what I've seen, is that even if it's possible to pass it in a URL, that it's also an option to pass it as a header. And then you create a header for it, and then you pass it in that way, and it's just attached within that call that we make to the API.
Cool. Okay. So I think we might have room for one more if there is one. If not, I'm just going to say thank you to everyone who tuned in and everybody who asked questions. We'll be following up with everyone with an email asking for feedback so we can tailor our future demos. And then if you have any use case questions, or you know something you'd like to see in the next live demo, feel free to email Teri, and her information is on the screen. And if you'd like to know more about Xplenty, you can visit our site at www.xplenty.com. So thanks again to everybody who joined, and hopefully I'll see you in the next demo. Bye.